Hello, Met fans. How we all doing? What's today's date? July 7th. Man, time is flying. 4th of July is gone already. And today is July 7th. So you know what we're going to do now? I'm going to tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about everything that's happened on this day in Met history on July 7th. Birthdays, uh, things that happened as a team for the New York Mets on this date. And to throw in some extra juice, we're going to talk about what's going on in the greatest Facebook group there is for the New York Mets, New York Mets Baseball Way of Life, later on in the broadcast. And we're going to do baseball Met trivia and Jeopardy. So hold on to your pants. We're getting ready for the ride. Okay, we have 5 birthdays to commemorate. Happy birthday, Bob Gallagher. Yes, Bob Gallagher's birthday today. He wore number 22 for New York Mets back in 1975. You know how the Mets got him? They traded one of the pillars of the Met infield in 1969, Ken Boswell, to get him in the offseason, late 1974. Played 1 year, only played 33 games with 15 at-bats, batted 133, so it didn't really make a mark with the Mets. But then he was traded by the Mets to the San Francisco Giants for Leon Brown right before the 76 season started. Happy birthday. Tommy Moore was born on this date in 1948. Tommy passed away in 2017. He wore number 19 and 39 with the Mets. All told, he pitched in 6 games, 3 each in 72 and 73. Nothing really to write home about. 15 total innings, 4.60 ERA. Started a game each year. But he was part of that big trade when the Mets got Joe Torre. It was him and Ray Sadecki who went to the Cardinals. And we got Jolton Joe Torre, part of that deal. You know who's also celebrating their birthday today? I'm going to tell you. Remember the Tim Teufel Shuffle? Well, start doing it today because it's Timmy's birthday. Great guy. Wore number 11 and number 18 with the Mets. How did we get Tim Teufel, you're asking? It was a pretty good trade, actually. We got Tim and Pat Crosby from the Minnesota Twins on January 16, 1986, for Billy Beane, who never lived up to the hype, Bill Latham, basically a journeyman pitcher, and Joe Klink. So it was a good deal. Tim was one of the best all-around utility players there were. He'd play anywhere you put him, primarily second base, but he'd also play first base, a little bit of third. All told, he was with us for 6 years, played 463 games with a 256 batting average. But he was just a good all-around guy. I think the players loved him. And let's not forget, he continued his career in the Met organization for quite some time. He was the manager for the Brooklyn Cyclones in 2003, the St. Lucie Mets in 2004, 2005, the Savannah Sand Knights in 2007, the St. Lucie Mets in 2008, 2009, Binghamton Mets in 2010, the Buffalo Bisons in 2011. So he was moving his way up the ranks in the minor league system as a manager, and then he became the coach. He was the third base coach from 2012 to 2016, and he was part of that good run. And what's funny is, what I remember about him as a coach, sometimes I was lucky enough to get good seats down by the Met dugout. Every time he ran out to third base, he'd give like the kids all on the sidelines bubble gum. It's these little things you remember. Tim was a cool guy. I liked him. Still do. And happy birthday to Andy Green, number 29 with the Mets. He played for us, second base and third base, 4 games, 4 at-bats, 1 hit as a Met. That's it. Number 29, it's Andy Green's birthday, and Andy turns 44 today. How about we wish a happy birthday to John Buck, number 44. He was quite an offensive force for the Mets, and he was pressed into service, and he was part of that big trade. Travis d'Arnaud, Noah Syndergaard, and Wilmer Becerra were traded to the Mets in exchange for R.A. Dickey, Josh Tolley, and Mike Nickius in the offseason in 2012. And what a trade that was. Good trade, and basically was a centerpiece for the Mets winning the title in 2015. But before he was traded by the Mets to the Pirates in 2013 at August 27, towards the end of the year, he had 368 at-bats and 15 homers and 60 RBIs. He was a good player for the Mets, and I enjoyed his stay with the Mets. Uh, and who didn't? Now what we're going to do is actually go back and put our hats on. See, I have my hat. This is my time hat here. We're going to go back into the past. And I'm looking at 1973 on this date. How about you? You should be, because that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the brutal George Stork Theodore Don Hahn outfield collision. On this date in 1973, a crowd of 30,468 filled up Shea Stadium to watch the last place Mets take on Eddie Matthews' fifth place Atlanta Braves. Braves slugger Hank Aaron was chasing the all-time home run record at this point and was the most famous face in baseball. Aaron was number 2 on the all-time home run list, and the Mets' own Willie Mays was number 3. The Mets were bottomed out in last place at 34-45 on this date. They were 12 and a half games out of first place, their lowest point in the season. It was still a long way to their 73 winning performance that resulted in the pennant. The game began with the Mets' Ray Sadecki going up against the 1970 Rookie of the Year Craig Morton. And he did that with the Expos, if you recall. Both pitchers would be long gone before this one was decided. Now here's the lineup. Tell me who's missing from the Brave lineup this day. We had Ralph Garr, right field, leading off. Marty Perez, shortstop, batting second. Darrell Evans, batting third, playing third base. Dusty Baker, center field, batting fourth. Davey Johnson, second base, batting fifth. Dick Dietz, batting sixth at first base. Mike Lum, left field, center, batting seventh. Paul Casanova, catching, batting eighth. And Carl Morton, ninth, pitching. Yes, you're correct if you said there was no Hank Aaron in there. And that was the year that Hank was seriously chasing Babe Ruth. And I think a lot of people came out there. I actually went that following Sunday to see Hank Aaron, and he had 2 home runs that following day in Shea Stadium. And that's the one game I will never, ever forget. He smacked him right into the Loge both times. Now, for the Mets, Don Hahn, center field, leading off. Felix Millan, second base, batting second. Wayne Garrett, shortstop, batting third. Rusty Staub, right field, batting fourth. John Milner, first base, batting fifth. Ken Boswell, third base, batting sixth. George Theodore, left field, batting seventh. Ron Hodges catching, batting eighth, and Ray Sadecki pitching, batting ninth. Now, the Braves helped the Mets with sloppy play in the first inning. Don Hahn got to second base on a 2-base error from left fielder Mike Lum. Felix the Cat Millan attempted sacrifice, but third baseman Darrell Evans made a throwing error, allowing Hondo Hahn to score. Now, the Braves tied it on catcher Dick Dietz's sacrifice line, the second and third, and 3 singles by Millan, Rusty Staub, and Ken Boswell put New York ahead. The Braves came back when future Mets manager Davey Johnson, who remembers that year he had in 73, he had 43 home runs. Well, he hit his 21st homer at this point. Now, in the 6th inning, George Theodore was playing left field for an ailing Leon Jones, and he drew a leadoff walk. Theodore, the Stork, scored on Don Hahn's double as the Mets tied it once again. The two wood players would make headlines of the day, but not because they're hitting. In the 7th inning, the Braves got to Mets reliever Phil Hennigan, and a famous play that is vividly remembered today took place. I still remember it. It was ghastly. Mike Lum led off with a base hit and was sacrificed over. Pinch hitter Long Island's own Frank Tepedino got a pinch hit single. The ball was misplayed in left field by Stork Theodore, and Lum scored as Tepedino advanced to second. Next up, the Roadrunner, Ralph Garr, who would steal 35 bases on the season, win the batting title in 1974. He hit 353, hit a screaming shot in the gap to left center field. Theodore was upset that he had misplayed the last hit, allowing a run to score, and was determined to make the catch. He ran full speed ahead, staring the shot down by Garr. At the same time, center fielder Don Hahn was chasing the liner as well. The two crashed into each other head on in one of the worst collisions in Met history. At first, the two players lay motionless in the Shea outfield. The ball rolled all the way to the wall. Frank Tepedino scored, and the speedy Garr had himself an inside park homer before Rusty Staub could get the ball in. The Shea crowd held its breath, as did the Mets players. One of the scarier moments in Met history. Tom McKenna came running out, the trainer, to the outfield. Hahn was able to get up holding his stomach as it seemed he had the wind knocked out of him. He was replaced in center field by veteran Willie Mays, but returned to the lineup 3 days later. Now, Theodore was unable to get up, as everyone feared the worst. The Stork had a thin 6'4", 190-pound frame and took the worst of the hit. He fractured his hip and had to be taken off the field on a stretcher. He would be out for most of the regular season, making just one pinch hit appearance on September 20th, striking out. He did get into the postseason, making 2 World Series pinch hit appearances against the Oakland A's, but was hitless. Back on July 3rd, 1973, Theodore had been hit in the eye by a pitch from San Diego Padres' Gary Ross. Now, at the time, if you recall, if you were around, it was feared he would lose his eyesight, but the Stork was back in the lineup 5 days later. Now, after this outfield collision at a New York hospital, Theodore told reporters he had dreamed 2 weeks earlier that he was being removed from the field on a stretcher carried by Jerry Koosman and Tug McGraw. How eerie is that? Now, George would spend a few days in the hospital getting photographed playing his guitar, adding to his legacy as a Met folk hero. And he was loved by the fans of the Metropolitans. In just 2 brief seasons, Theodore made himself a most popular Met player, and he is always remembered with affection, even though he wasn't the best player on the field. I actually saw George, they bring players back. The alumni were coming back a few years back on Friday nights, and he was a cool dude to meet. He's signing autographs and everything. Just a fun guy. Now, in May 2011, he told the Daily News, "I did play 2 more years, but I was never the same. It changed my life. Put me in a new direction. It's all been good. That's the way it is." Hahn would be back in the lineup 3 days later, finishing up the year as the Mets' main center fielder. He played in 93 games, batted .229 with 2 homers, 10 doubles, 21 RBIs, and a .989 fielding percentage. But let's get back to that game on July 7th. Cleon Jones, who was not at 100% after an injury-plagued season so far, had to fill in at left field for George Theodore. In the bottom of the 8th, the Mets were down 6-3. Cleon Jones led off with a walk, and Duffy Dyer and Jim Fregosi, both coming in as pinch hitters, both walked. Hall of Fame legend Willie Mays singled to left field. Say hey, bringing in 2 runs, cutting the Braves' lead to a run, 6-5. Now, if you remember, the manager for the Braves was Eddie Matthews. Yeah, Eddie Matthews was actually managing Hank Aaron. How about that? And he brought in veteran reliever Joe Horner. Now, Felix Millan reached on a force play, and Wayne Garrett greeted new pitcher Joe Horner with a double, scoring Millan and Mays. The Mets were now ahead 7-6. But Tug, as you recall, he had a tough first half in 73. He was brought in. He couldn't hold the Braves down. McGraw was having problems all season up to this point, admitting he had forgotten everything he knew about pitching, saying he didn't know what to do with the ball. He served up 3 singles and a walk, which tied the game up. Harry Parker came in, but a force play and 2 more walks made it 9-7 Braves. The Mets got one back in the 9th, but fell short 9-8 in a wild, close, heartbreaking loss. Now, with George Theodore and Hahn possibly out as well, it just added to the other injuries that with the 1973 Mets had, and they basically reached rock bottom at this point. Excuse me, a little indigestion. Some of the turning points of the game was this was the last game of relief for pitcher Phil Hennigan. And after coming over from Cleveland in exchange for Brent Straub and Bob Rauch, he had gone 0-4. And after today's game, he was getting roughed up too. And he was supposed to be the complement to Tug McGraw out of the bullpen. And he was sent to AAA Tidewater, never returning to the major leagues again. So that was tough for Phil. And this would also be the last Mets game for Jim Fregosi, who would have his contract sold to Texas Rangers. And you know, Orion fans aren't happy about that, I bet. Anyway, that's what happened on this date. You want to know some more stuff that happened on this date? I'll tell you. I will tell you. On this date, after taking a 9-run lead into the 6th inning, the Mets held on to beat the Phillies at Citizens Bank Park 10-9. This game is eerily similar to a 1992 contest also played in Philadelphia that caused Hall of Fame announcer Bob Murphy to remark after the final out, "Oh, they win the damn thing by a score of 10-9. Now, I know you're not going to hire me for my Bob Murphy imitations, but I did try. Give me credit for that. Also on this date in 1964, Johnny Callison's 9th inning 3-run homer off Dick Raditz capped a 4-run rally and gives the National League a 7-4 win in the All-Star game at Shea Stadium. And now the series in the National All-Star game was tied at 17-17 between both leagues. How about that? This date in 1993, Brett Saberhagen throws a firecracker on a table near reporters at Shea Stadium, but no one is hurt. Yeah, that's where the Mets, Vince Coleman, Brett Saberhagen, That's when they had that funny Met jersey with the little swoosh underneath. Those were the days, huh? Then on this day, 1968, maybe Jacob DeGrom could take notes on this come Sunday. Throwing just 9 pitches, Tom Seaver earns the only save of his 20-year major league career when the Mets beat the Phillies at Connie Mack Stadium. Tom Terrific strikes out Dick Allen on 3 pitches, and then quickly dispatches Johnny Callison and Tony Taylor on outfield flies. Good stuff. And now let's go to the Met trivia question today. Who else did the Mets get in the trade for Tommy Agee? And our Met Jeopardy is 2 clues. He began the 1991 season as starting catcher ahead of Mackey Sasser and served as backup to Todd Hunway when the latter was promoted. Second clue is signed with the Atlanta Braves as a free agent on September 26, 1993. Now, once we're done telling you what's going on in the group, we'll give you the answer. So stick right there, will you? You got nowhere else to go, do you? The Met game doesn't start till 2 o'clock. I don't want to hear it. Anyway, what's going on in the group? I always like to highlight a couple of topics that are being discussed. You know me, Mr. Topic Man. And I asked, when I say Willie Randolph, what's the first thing that pops into your head? We've got some good answers. Glenn Sherrick flat out says scapegoat. Israel Rosales says number 30 for the New York Yankees back in the 70s. Tim St. Clair says that's a lot of meat from a Subway commercial with Joe Torre. Good memory, Tim. I forgot all about that. Good one. David Aricchio says kill the bullpen. Thorne and Scott says great second base, New York Yankees. Phil Giordano also says great second baseman for the Yankees, but over his head is manager of the Mets. Yeah, I think Willie should be a serious candidate for the Hall of Fame. He was that good. But he won't get in. He never qualified, but the first time around. But maybe the Veterans Committee will be kinder to him. There was another topic I wanted to touch on. I asked, who do you think is the best Met manager of all time? And it looks like you guys were Gil Hodges fans. The majority. Anthony Morosco, who you know is having that big campaign to get Gil Hodges in the Hall of Fame, said hashtag HOF needs Hodges. Support Anthony in his quest to get Gil into the Hall of Fame, will you? Claire Elizabeth Hall says Gil Hodges, who overnight swept away the image of the lovable losers and instilled a winning attitude, which just a year later led to the most improbable world championship ever. And Don Lobb agreed with that comment from Claire. He said, agree 100%. And Mark Riggle says, Gil Hodges by far. David J. Rubin, I don't know if he was stuttering or not. Just kidding, David. He says, Gil. And of course, Gil. Mark Riggle replied, perfect, after David said that. Rod Godamowitz says Carlos Beltran. And why? He never lost a game. And David Aricchio backs him up by saying, should have never lost this job. Jason Lynch says probably Gil Hodges, but in his lifetime, Jason's a youngster, said Terry Collins, Bobby Valentine, and Davey Johnson, number 3, deserves as much criticism for winning only 1 World Series as he does credit for winning 1. And there were a couple more. Rainer Ingram says Gil Hodges. Israel Rosales says Davey Johnson, number 5. Jerry Plunkett says David Johnson. He took a last-place team from 1983 and turned them around. At one point in their 1984 season, when they finished 90-72, he had them at 59-37. His first 5 years, from 1994 to 1988, was the best 5-year stretch in Met history. Points well taken. Points well taken, Jerry and I. Love the way you backed up your statement. Okay, now we're going to go back. And I know a lot of you are waiting for this moment. We're going to go back to the Met trivia question and Met Jeopardy question of the day. Okay. Who's ready? Okay, here was the final Met Jeopardy. 2 clues. He began the 1991 season as the starting catcher ahead of Mackey Sasser and served as backup to Todd Hunway when the latter was promoted. Second one was signed with the Atlanta Braves as a free agent on November 26, 1993. Well, the correct response should be, because it is the correct response, who was Charlie O'Brien? So congrats to our group Jeopardy whiz, Jason Lynch, on being the first to submit the correct answer. Now, today's trivia question was, who else did the Mets get in the trade for Tommy Agee? The correct answer is Al Weiss. Congrats to George Driscoll on being the first to submit the correct answer. Way to go, guys. Good job. As always, we'll have a trivia question and Jeopardy question every day here. So that's another reason for you guys to subscribe. So if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to this YouTube cast. We do 2 a day. One just capping what's going on with the Mets currently on that day. And the second one, we reflect on what's happened in Met history on this day. You'll love them both. And if you have any comments, please leave the comments here. You can like it, dislike it. And if you ever need to reach out to me, I'm at philstan41@gmail.com. I would very much so love to hear from you. And again, thanks for all your support. And if you haven't joined the baseball group, New York Mets Baseball Way of Life, please do so. We talk about great stuff every day. A lot of knowledgeable fans who respect each other, and we just talk Mets baseball the way it should be talked. And I also have a podcast, New York Mets Baseball Way of Life. So if you want to hear this, basically, it's almost the same thing in podcast form where I combine both of these YouTube casts into one. And you can't make it to YouTube, subscribe to the podcast. We're on all the major carriers. Once again, that's New York Mets Baseball Way of Life. So enjoy the doubleheader today. Hopefully we get some domination in game 1. I'm going to game 2. Maybe I'll tell you what went on with me at game 2. Tell you what I had, whole shebang. But hopefully they pull out a double dip and we could talk about the sweep and maybe a sweep of the series tomorrow. Hopefully. So hopefully we're back tomorrow with a happy recap. So enjoy the day. Enjoy both games. Remember, first one's at 2, a dandy, DeGrom versus Burns. And the second one, it looks like Robert Stock's going to go on the mound against Anderson for the Brewers. So it should be a fun day. Talk to you guys all again tomorrow. And again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.